As you know, Led Zepp formed in 1968 from the remains of the Yardbirds. The band was led by Jimmy Page, and from the off, he was looking for musicians who could match his talent and passion. He eventually brought together vocalist Robert Plant, drummer John Bonham, and multi-instrument maestro John Paul Jones. John Paul Jones acted very much as the bridge between the group's outlandish creative visions and actualization. This formula seemed to work too. Each brought their own level of significant talent to the table, and they catapulted to fame, releasing 2 groundbreaking records in 1969, Led Zeppelin 1 and 2. Jones was immersed in music from the start of his life. His parents were in the industry too. His upbringing and public school education really prepared him for the musical revolution of the 1960s. By then, he had established himself as a respected session player and arranger, contributing to classics by the Rolling Stones, Dusty Springfield, and others. Initially, John Paul Jones wasn't even considered to be a part of Led Zeppelin. He eventually joined, however, with some encouragement from his wife. And Jimmy Page was thrilled by his acceptance, because by this point John Paul Jones had a brilliant reputation for playing. Jones brought a sophisticated touch to everything he did in that band and beyond. The impact Jones had on Led Zeppelin is legendary. He crafted memorable moments like the bass line of Ramble On and the dynamic melody of Black Dog. His keyboards added depth to tracks like The Rain Song and Trampled Underfoot. In the 70s, Led Zeppelin became one of the biggest live acts in the world, playing hundreds of shows. This sort of schedule and pressure can be really hard work for a band. By the mid-1970s, the band members were feeling the exhaustion from the lifestyle. John Bonham even wanted to leave the group several times in this period because of the continuous grueling tours, and wanting to spend more time with his family. Bonham's feelings were exacerbated by his growing dependency on drugs and alcohol. Peter Grant, Led Zeppelin's manager, often had to convince him to stay in the band with financial incentives or even gifts, like a brand new Lamborghini on one occasion. This intense touring lifestyle really took a toll on Bonham and the overall dynamics of the band as well. In a 2007 interview with Q magazine, John Paul Jones reflected on his time in Led Zeppelin. He revealed a lot about the friendships within the band, and he suggested that the members weren't particularly close. He said this: "We got along fine, the thing is we have never socialized. As soon as we left the road, we never saw each other, which I always thought contributed to the longevity and harmony of the band. We weren't friends." And it really seems here that John Paul Jones is painting the members as co-workers rather than friends. "We weren't like a group that grew up together and made it big," he explained. Led Zeppelin wasn't exactly manufactured, but it was put together by Jimmy. Now, this is really interesting to think about, isn't it? Because like I said earlier, when you look at a band as successful as Led Zeppelin, who are there every night on stage playing together, there's this chemistry, there's this energy between them. Each member of the band is on the exact same wavelength. So it's crazy to think that this kind of connection doesn't automatically come with a close friendship as well. Just look at the Beatles, for example. Things got really heated between them. And then once the band broke up, the members would go years without speaking to each other. Not exactly what close friends do, more like an ex-colleague. Esteemed photographer Corinthia West, who was close friends with Mick Jagger and Ronnie Wood throughout the 1970s and 80s, mentioned in interviews that she rarely saw Keith Richards or Charlie Watts in the same circles. She explained that the familial bonds within a rock band are often an illusion. And there is another reason as well that John Paul Jones might look back at his time in Led Zeppelin with a sort of negative light. Being so crucial to the success of Led Zeppelin meant that when Page and the band's frontman Robert Plant launched their imaginatively named project, Page and Plant, in 1994 without him, Jones was rightfully pissed off when he found out only through the newspaper. It irked him even further that the news broke shortly after he and Plant discussed doing an unplugged effort themselves. In 2010, John Paul Jones did an uncut Q&A with fans and had this to say about the situation. "Oh yeah, I was pissed off about it. The surprise was in not being told. It's ancient history now, but it was a bit annoying to find out about it while reading the papers. It came just after Robert and I had been discussing the idea of doing an unplugged project." He continued, Then I'm on tour in Germany, I turn on the TV and see Robert and Jimmy doing it with someone else playing all my parts. I was pissed off at the time, you would be, wouldn't you? But it's all in the past, isn't it? It might be all in the past, but Jones can be safe knowing that the project lasted only 4 years. It culminated with one album, 1998's Walking into Clarksdale, which the late legendary producer Steve Albini of course produced. In fact, weirdly, that album kick-started Steve Albini's career again. He was going through a massive slump because of the disastrous episode in producing Nirvana's In Utero record. And as luck would have it, I actually made an entire video about that story. You can click up in the corner to watch that. Now, another element of all this, another thing that separates John Paul Jones from the rest of the band, was the whole deal with the devil ordeal. Many believed their music contained hidden messages of demon worship, with rumours even circulating about backward messages in Stairway to Heaven. And Jimmy Page's very real obsession with Aleister Crowley didn't help either. In fact, he bought and lived in his previous home. He also collected a bunch of memorabilia throughout his lifetime. John Paul Jones, though integral to the band, didn't receive the same satanic connections as his bandmates. While Jimmy Page was revered as a godlike guitar virtuoso, Robert Plant as the planet's most versatile vocalist, and John Bonham as an otherworldly drummer, Jones was often seen as an albeit talented standard bassist. This perception fueled speculation that Led Zeppelin had made a pact with the devil, suggesting Jones had resisted the temptations that allegedly propelled his bandmates to greatness. And whether or not this deal with the devil stuff is true, it does highlight the fact that John Paul Jones was very different from his bandmates. He was certainly less flamboyant, but there might be a valid reason for that. Geddy Lee summed it up perfectly when he said, "The thing that held the whole thing down was John Paul Jones' bass playing." So if you listen to How Many More Times, I mean, no matter how wild that song gets at times, there's John Paul Jones, just holding it all down in such a fluid way. Now, signs of discord in Led Zeppelin started to increase in the mid to late 1970s. Tensions between the four members escalated significantly as they worked on their final 2 albums, Presence and In Through the Outdoor. During this time, Page and Bonham indulged in more of a party lifestyle, staying up to the early hours of the morning every day, while Plant and Jones were more dedicated to their studio work, arriving at sessions on time and clear-headed. Like ships passing in the night, Page and Bonham decided to record their parts in the evenings. All the while, Bonham's resentment of the band's lifestyle was increasing too. Ritchie Blackmore, legendary guitarist and founding member of Deep Purple, was very friendly with Bonham. They would drink together in rock clubs in LA. Blackmore once revealed, there were a couple of moments there where he ended up crying because he wanted to go home. He didn't want to be in America, missed his wife, didn't want to be in a big band. He wanted to be in a small band in Birmingham, just playing. He didn't care about all that fame. Sadly, of course, John Bonham passed away in September 1980 due to pulmonary asphyxiation, following a heavy drinking session. Bonham's death, of course, marked the end of Led Zeppelin. And John Paul Jones wouldn't see much of Page or Plant after this. As we mentioned earlier, he was left out of their collaboration. They all reunited again in 1995 as Led Zeppelin were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. John Paul Jones made a speech which was scathing of Page and Plant. He thanked their manager, Peter Grant, and then took a swipe at Plant and Page by saying thanks for finally remembering his phone number. Have a watch.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to add also my thanks to Peter Grant, who gave us the freedom to do what we did. And also, thank you, my friends, for finally remembering my phone number.
Now, we've been focusing on John Paul Jones in this video. I've made another video that focuses on Robert Plant because he has had an incredibly tragic life. From losing loved ones to multiple car crashes, it's all quite surprising. Click over here to watch that video next.